Let's Talk JMMA with Charlie Jewett from sogo-kaku.com. This is a podcast about the deep end of Japanese combat sports scene. I'm your host, Shu Hirata from On the Road Management. Now, let's begin. Good morning, Charlie.
Good evening, Shu. How's it going over there?
You're good. This is our 22nd episode of our, It's almost a year. It's been
adding up.
Yeah, so that's very good. And thank you for everyone for listening to our podcast. And I think we should dive right into the Rizin 33 additional cards.
Yes.
Which was announced last week at the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And let's see. Let's see. Okay, go. All right. So, what was announced? Let's see.
Yeah, we got Yachi, Sosa, Mikuru, Hagiwara, Takeda, Shibisai, Hamasaki. Got a bunch of announcements.
Right. And okay, the fight surprised many people was Mikuru versus Saito.
Yes.
Yes. What do you think about that?
Well, it's kind of interesting because people may or may not be aware that Mikuru did this Abima TV show where I believe he fought 3 people in a street fight.
Right.
And if they won, they were going to get like $10,000 if they won. And
I think it's more like close to 100K.
That's what it was. Okay, so I knew it was 100,000.
So that's pretty good, right? Yeah.
one of the guys he fought was like the disgraced brother of like a idol guy.
He went to the jail for like 5-6 years.
Right.
Yeah.
But the report coming out of that event was that Mikuru had injured his knee.
Mm-hmm.
That he was like trying to make it like a real street fight, and so he injured his knee. And so there was a lot of concern that he wasn't going to be able to participate in Rising on New Year's Eve.
Right. So. But when
now it seems like his whole stance is like, I do what I want. Screw you guys. I'm fine. I'll be fighting on Rising anyway.
Right. I think one reporter asked him, so what happened to your injury? And he said, what injury? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, just to mention this, if you beat Mikuru Asakura, you will win almost 100K. This is a show created by Abema TV. And I think they supposedly did a lot of auditions, and many big guys applied for it, and they never got accepted. So they probably selected the guys that they want that he doesn't mind fighting, right?
Well, I'm sure he had a say in it. I'm sure they showed him the auditions and like.
And I'm hearing that this show has been criticized a lot in the Japanese media. That he basically beat up 2 complete amateur plus 1 44 years old ex-fighter.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a so-called variety show. I guess I don't know if he really did 100%, but he basically beat him up. So there was even an article about the lawyer writing, see if it's illegal for Abema to set up the fights like that and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I mean, it's always a bad look. It reminds me of like when George Foreman, after he lost Ali, he fought all those guys in one night in Montreal.
Yeah, that's true.
The boxing establishment kind of made fun of him. It's like, it doesn't prove anything. You just beat up a bunch of has-beens or never-weres. And it seems like they're kind of taking the same approach with Mikuru here.
Yep.
That what value is there in you beating up 3 people? I mean, I watched some of the videos. One of the guys, they showed his training. Like, that guy's clearly never trained before. I think it was the guy that was part of the band. Like the boy band.
This was a pay-per-view show, right? So you actually pay to watch this?
Yes. No, I didn't. I watched the lead up to it.
Oh, I see. Right, but you
didn't actually pay to. I didn't actually watch the fights.
Yeah.
But I watched the lead up, and I was like, this guy's never like been to a gym before.
No, exactly right. So it's almost like I think that's basically what some of the media who is being really critical about this whole program is saying that this is almost a criminal, to set up a fights like that.
It's almost like, what was that show in the U.S. like Joes versus Pros?
Something like that, right? Yeah.
They used to do stuff like this, but I think the difference was in those they would have like MMA matches as well. I remember, but it'd be like you have to out wrestle Randy Couture or something. They wouldn't wasn't like Randy Couture beating the crap out of you, which I think was the difference.
Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the criticisms they have is like Abema has done a similar program before. If you beat Asashori, which is a sumo wrestler, you win almost 100K. If you beat Tenshin Nasukawa, you win. It was a big show, but Tenshin Nasukawa's program, they were wearing headgears. But for this, they weren't, right? None of them were wearing headgears, and it was a 4-ounce open finger gloves. So, it was kind of dangerous. It could be considered dangerous, is what the majority of the general media in Japan is saying, I think, right?
But is Mikuru like a marketing genius? Because he's been trying to label himself as like this guy that came up off the streets as a street fighter, as a tough guy.
Oh, I know, right.
Now he has the media reporting like, oh, he beat up all these guys in a street fight. He's too good. He's too good at fighting on the streets.
Yeah, exactly. But again, what happened to Mikuru was, I think a couple of days after the pay-per-view show, he actually publicly apologized for doing such a show because he feels this was just a bully and sent a bad message to the kids, right? Because you're athletes, you're not supposed to kind of beat up on those guys who has never been to the gym, probably, right?
Yeah, maybe it was just him trying out a new show and it got really bad reaction. But I think most of the negative reaction probably came because from the Rising fans, at least, from his reported injury.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Why are you getting injured in this non-important like little game you're doing when you should be fighting in Rizin?
Yeah, exactly right. That's from the Rising fans' point of view, and I think from the general media, I think what happened was like there's a tabloid magazine called Flash in Japan, and they actually waited on outside Mikuru's mother's place, and they kind of interviewed her and took a photo of her. And she did take the interview. She answered the questions, and she did allow these people to take a photo. So they ran that article, but Mikuru supposedly got pissed off, and he openly stated that he's going to go after that publisher legally. Not sure if he can do that, but I think maybe that's his.
He willingly did everything. I don't know what he can do about it.
Yeah, exactly. No, you can't do much about it because his mother starred in YouTube and stuff like that, so he's not a public person,
So do you think he's the kind of person that he's saying all this just to generate more attention for it?
I honestly think so. I honestly think so because I think everything he said he does seems like it's all marketing, because I even saw him and his lawyer actually calling Shibatar in YouTube, one of the YouTube videos, sort of threatened to sue him for some kind of what is it, like defamation of a character or whatever that was. But it's almost unbelievable they do that if it's true, right? Because no lawyer will do that publicly.
Right. Like I can understand like if a lot of situations where a lawyer might get involved, but if she willingly gave the interview and like had her picture taken, I don't see any legal action that you can take.
No, there's nothing you could do. I mean, unless
he's also friends with Shibatar, so that just cooks of like home cooking to me of like a marketing scam.
Yeah, exactly. So she was on the Ibika's YouTube channel, so not much he could do. But so I really think it's his marketing. It's another like a marketing genius side of Mikuru. And on top of that, at the press conference, he even went out to mention one of our clients, Ren Hiramoto. He said, "Where is Hiramoto? He's here," kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, my theory is that Mikuru wants to fight Ren Hiramoto before Ren Hiramoto gets better at MMA.
Oh, I think so, right.
Because he just wants to take him down and do what Hagiwara did.
But, it's not going to happen that quick, No. That should be the money fight. They should build up a little bit more. I mean, look at how long Takeru and Tenshin is being built up. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but,
Well, the Takeru Tenshin one is weird because I feel like now that Saitama has sold all of its seats for the Rising New Year's Eve show, I feel like now they're going to come out and tell us whether it's happening or not, which to makes me think it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean it's less than a month. How many weeks we're looking at, right? So
everyone on Japanese Twitter is looking for anything to talk about that this fight is happening. Takeru got a haircut, so they were like, "This means the fight's happening." And then there was like some pictures taken where it looked like the Rising photographer took the picture, and they were like, "Oh, the fight's happening." And so There's this whole thing.
Why do you think the fighter gets a new haircut? Does that mean the fight's happening? Because that's what the Uruka tweeted. He said, "I'm going to dye my hair to blonde," and a lot of fans thought that, okay, well, you're going to get a fight in New Year's Eve, and I guess that's how they expect.
Yeah, but I mean, I did see on Twitter some guy had a picture of Takeru doing an interview, and the guy doing the interview is holding like a press junket.
Yeah.
And inside of it was the picture that everyone was talking about, and it wasn't Tenshin, who was his opponent on it. So I don't think the Tenshin fight's going to happen because that picture looked kind of legitimate to me.
Right, and Takeru did tweet it that he's hopeful that he's able to tell the story sometime soon, blah blah blah. But it doesn't mean that he's gonna announce the fight. I think he's just gonna have some another thing, and we'll explain what happened and blah blah blah.
Well, that's what I was kind of laughing at, is everyone was like set all over Takeru's kind of cryptic tweet about, oh, I can't really say anything, but I'll talk when I can, and hopefully I can fight by the end of the year. And I think some people were like, this means he's fighting Tenshin at the end of the year. But in my mind, it's like, no, it means he's fighting at the end of the year. That doesn't mean he's fighting Tenshin at the end of the year.
You know what's so funny, that I have to say this, I don't know why, but everybody's not blaming K1 in Japan about this, because the way I look at it, even though he's a K1 champion, whatever that is, he's an individual professional athlete. And unless he signs some stupid long contract, he should be able to go and do this fight without like letting K1 negotiate with Rizin. But this is a Japanese combat sports scene that, once you're a champion for the promotions, they sort of control you. And the main thing they're demanding is right now is like they need a neutral promotion to do this, right? Not K1, not Rizin. So, I mean, this is not going to happen, right?
Well, all you have to know, the most telling example to me is that when Tenshin did an interview at a Rizin event, he made sure they removed all the Rizin logos from behind him.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
That just tells you all you need to know about the relationship.
Oh, I know. And I really wonder, is K1 paying him some monthly salary? Like putting him on a real fat contract? I'm not really sure.
I hope so. For all he goes through, I hope they're paying him.
But I sincerely hope so, But anyway, so let's get back to this another additional card issues that. So when they announced Saito versus Mikuru Asakura, Clever Koike tweeted and says, "Hey, I heard that you designated me as the opponent, and I accept it. But why the fight didn't happen?" And everybody was saying like, "Oh, what's going on? Maybe Rizin didn't want you to be on television, talking about his mat and blah blah blah." But to me, this tweet is pretty odd, right? I mean, I would love to hear what his management have to say.
Well, it seems like Koike has been running afoul of the promotion repeatedly. And even in the last Rizin confession, not the last, but one of the more recent ones, Sakibara said, like, maybe it's time to forgive Koike.
Right. I remember that. Right.
Do you think it's Koike or his management? It's like kind of pulling all these games.
What I'm hearing from other people, because I don't want to get involved, so I don't really go ahead and ask around, but I'm hearing that there's a problem with his management.
Yeah.
Meaning that probably the way they negotiate with Rizin, and also at the same time, maybe the way they communicate with Clever, maybe they're not really having 100% understanding, Yeah,
because it reminds me of like the whole Musayev thing. Like Musayev's Twitter his manager always tweets crazy stuff on his Twitter. And now Koike seems to be kind of in a similar route.
Right.
And at least publicly, it looked like Rizin was interested in having him on this card, which makes me think that there must be some type of breakdown in negotiation. And that's why he's not fighting on this card?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, exactly. But the Clever himself saying that after that tweet about, him accepting Mikuru fight, he also tweeted that, oh, there's only me and you left to Ushiku. What can we fight then? Kind of stuff. That's another most recent tweet he tweeted it. So it seems like Clever, right. It seems like Clever wants to fight. He's willing to do the deal and blah blah blah, and he keeps mentioning that in tweet. But why this is not happening?
Is this like an ill-attempted strategy to get the fans to think that he wants to fight, and that it's Rizin's fault that he's not fighting as like part of a negotiation tactic?
I mean, I don't know. Do you really think so? Because this is a big mystery for me. And, I think his management is the promoter that promotes Nexus show, right? Isn't
Okay.
it? Yamada? So he's a promoter too. So he's not a pure 100% management. So I'm not really sure what he's thinking too. So
Just seems like ever since like around fall of this year, a lot of like issues have arisen with him that never happened before.
Right.
I'm kind of curious about what's happening. Because there's the whole like I can't make weight, these alleged knee injury, but there's pictures of him playing soccer and stuff.
Right.
And
And I think one thing it's revealed for sure was that Clever Koike's contract was just a one fight contract, right? So he had nothing attached to it. But this is what really puzzles me because even the Musaev too, I think he tweeted it that his contract is over with Rizin now. So he's claiming he's a free agent. Now, most of the promotional contract, right? Most of the multi-fight deals, they got this thing for exclusive negotiation period, followed by match period. Now, what point of this status of the contract status do you call yourself free agent? When you enter matching period? Or when you're done with the matching period? So I don't know about what Musaev knows about even his contract, because if he claims his matching period is over as of December, then his last fight in the contract must have been over like almost a year ago. You know what I mean? Like 9 months ago, or whatever, right? So it puzzles me. And in the same sense that if the Clever's contract is a single fight contract, maybe he had nothing after that, no matching period, none of that, you know?
Well, my theory is that Koike had a one fight contract, but then in around fall, things for the coronavirus were looking quite good. All the numbers were going down, and it was looking like people were going to be able to like leave Japan and do stuff. So my theory was that he thought he could go fight in the UFC or Bellator or something, and now that door is shut again. So now he's trying to get back into Rizin, kind of.
You know what? But honestly, I don't know. I never asked Sean, but do you think UFC would have signed Clever?
Not at this point, no.
I don't think so either. You know, like it's a featherweight stacked, and they have so much fighter coming out of contenders and looking for a fight and an alternate fighter. You know, it's not like
wasn't KSW still interested in him though?
You know, that's one thing. They released him though, right? Even though he was their champion, and I'm not sure, I heard from some of the Polish medias and some people who's close to Polish MMA that the KSW thought that his fight style was boring. Yeah, so but I'm not sure, you know. But obviously, but here's the point: is if he can't get to UFC, then second choice would be probably Bellator, right, or even PFL. PFL, he probably could negotiate on his own, and they will probably take him. You know what I mean? I don't know if
just $1 million.
Well, I know, and I know PFL is very interested in the Japanese market, so it only makes sense to take Clever, right? So I don't know if his management talked to PFL or not, but again, then his choice would be a Bellator, right? It's another choice, and it's kind of obvious that you have to be in good terms with the Rizin if you want to go to Bellator,
right? Because I think Scott Coker is going to value the relationship.
I mean, come on,
more than one fighter.
Right, so it makes zero sense for him to in bad term with Rizin.
Right.
Yeah, so
I think the manager is doing something weird because, I mean, and it's a mixture of Koike. Satoshi's the same, and he in the same group, and he seems to be just fine.
I know exactly. Is Satoshi managed by the same guy?
I don't know, but I mean, he's so close with Koike that you think they'd be in like this on the same page almost.
I know. That's why that's another mystery for me too, because I thought they were managed by the same person, So,
but they also seem quite different, like personality-wise. So that's playing a factor in because Satoshi seems very content to stay in Rizin and be a Rizin champion, where Koike seems to maybe want to go abroad.
Right, and not only that, I think it's already a known fact that Clever has some of the so-called street fight legendary stories, and also he got into some trouble with the promoter. Guys like Mr. Sayaki from Deep has all publicly said that the kid's a troublemaker, So it's totally different, right? But again, obviously he wants to fight, seems like,
Yeah.
So it's too bad that he's not getting fight.
I think he's trying to hold out for more money or something at this point. I don't know what he's doing, but something's happening.
Now, let me now, good thing you mentioned money. Another thing Mr. Sakakibara mentioned in this press conference was he was saying that, oh, you guys got to stop doing these tweets in the middle of negotiations. It makes everything so hard. And he mentioned, I think it's about the Shibata and Kouzi, right? Negotiation.
Right.
I think Shibata totally blasted that. And in this YouTube video I saw, that he actually even reviewed how much he was being offered. It was 2 million yen first, but he was being able to negotiate it up to 5 million yen, which is about a little bit less than $50,000 US.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, when you really look at it, right? I mean, like UFC, you start from what, 12-12, 14-14, whatever, right? If you win, that's 24 or 28, whatever. So that's the Shibata is making way more money. Now, not to mention, I know many people's person Rizin, and when you hear Shibata is making 50 grand, I think more than half of the Japanese fighter get pissed off about that. So I think this is going to make Mr. Sakakibara's negotiation very difficult, I think.
Yeah. Well, sorry. It's this weird thing where Shibatar isn't really a fighter. He's more of like a YouTube personality.
Yeah, exactly.
His last fight got so much attention. It's like you can't be mad that he's getting paid more because he's not the same. And unfortunately, you're not the same thing.
Right. I mean, exactly. That's what actually Shibata even said. His value should be based on the TV rating that he scored for Rizin on last New Year's Eve. For Rizin,
TV ratings a huge gamble last year because he fought a legitimate kickboxer, and he could have been made to look like a fool.
Right.
And he actually put on a very entertaining bout that most people were talking about afterwards. And so I think this year he does deserve to get paid, but the question is how much.
Right. I mean, here's what it is. My wild guess, right? Because I haven't asked anybody yet, but I'm pretty sure that Clever did not make 50K. Unless, you know what I mean? So if I were Clever, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Clever feels like, oh, come on, I beat the most popular guy in Rizin. Why can't I get paid more? Right?
Yeah. Well, if I was Rizin, I would just point to the ratings. It's like the clearest telling. They know all the ratings for all of they even know the ratings per fight on Fuji television.
Right. Each fight
probably had very high ratings.
Yeah, exactly. And also pay-per-view, sales and all kinds of stuff, right? They have all the record, Yeah. So, so I think it's going to be very interesting. But so far, the fight, it was announced for the New Year's Eve. Besides Saito versus
don't you think that the New Year's Eve card needs a kind of freak show fight?
Yeah, of course.
This is probably the best option they have.
Right, and also maybe Bobby All again, and also remember
exactly.
Miura, the soccer player's son, is making a debut.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not really getting attention from the general media, but they think the general public will be interested in it.
Do you think Fuji Television would be interested in Bobby Oligan?
I'm not really sure about that because I think out of how many fights are they going to do? 20? And how many spots already filled? I mean, almost half. Right?
There's still 5 or 6 fights left, I think.
Right. So, and if they put Shibata in it, that one spot that you need for the entertainment factor is already filled. So, do you really need second one? Right. I mean, do you really need all going in there? Not sure. I think if I arise in, I rather want to try to put in a guy who may want to promote for the next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you this right now, and a couple of my guys are still sort of waiting, hoping to get fights in New Year's Eve. And I think they're going to make a decision in a day or two, So I think this is the last week. They're making a very last-minute matchmaking.
Well, I think that Sakakibara even commented that one of the matches that he's waiting for is Rina.
Rina,
right.
Because,
as everyone knows, Rina got a big cut over her eye in the Miyu Yamamoto fight. And Sakakibara said that if it heals, she's going to be on the card.
Then who she's going to fight? I think Oshima would be the only choice.
I have a different theory, but I will say, before I say that, she's been training at Brave every day. She's essentially in a fight camp.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a matter of fact of whether or not a doctor clears the eye to fight. But my theory is that if she fights, she'll fight Siwoo Park.
Yeah, she's there, right? And she's
there. She's foreign.
Mm-hmm.
She's last fight was at 49 kilo.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a striker, probably the type of style that Rena would want to fight in like a last minute matchup. And she has the connection to Ham Sohee. And she's beaten Saudi Oshima in the past. So I think there's a way to build up Siwoo Park. Plus her name's kind of been in the media a lot this year. So that would be my guess on who the opponent would be.
Okay.
Because I interviewed Saudi Oshima last week. And I don't think she's training, and she's put on a couple pounds. So I think she doesn't.
Do you think, even though she just lost, you don't think the rematch against Kanna Asakura will happen? Because that may be another, because they have to think about ratings.
Right. That would be a big fight. But I think Kanna Asakura might have injured her arm in the Saudi Oshima fight. Also, I wouldn't do that because it risk Kanna Asakura can't afford to lose again.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's lost 2 in a row, Ayaka Hamasaki and Saudi Oshima. I think you need to kind of give her a softball pitch to build her back up.
Right. Okay.
And I think that Rena has proven consistently in the past. I think in 2015 and 16, her New Year's Eve fight was the highest rated fight on the cards.
Right.
And her opponents were nobodies. And so I think Rena's proven that she can carry a fight by itself.
Sure. People wants to watch.
So it doesn't matter who her opponent is.
Right. So, but I think Rena is probably going to have a couple more fights left in her belt. That's it, right? She's probably looking maybe 2 or 3 fights to retirement.
She's been retiring for 10 years, Shu. I don't know what's happening. She's even commented recently that she's actually kind of pushing off on that.
Oh, okay.
And wanting to fight longer now. So I think because what seems to happen throughout her career is she'll do something new and then she'll like it, so she'll want to keep doing it. And she seems to be spending more and more time at Brave Gym, working on her wrestling. That seems to kind of reinvigorated her interest in the sport.
So, but she still probably want to get that win against Kanna, and probably do a super fight against Hamasaki if it's possible.
Well, actually, in an interview, she actually said, this is an interview from like a year ago, she said she's not actually interested in the Kanna Asakura rematch. That she's more interested in facing foreign talent. And more recently, she's even said that she's interested in going to Bellator again. She wants to get that win back and get a win in Bellator, which is why I kind of think she's maybe more interested in a fight like Siwoo Park. That seems to check more boxes for her.
What?
The Kanna Asakura makes sense because she is working at a wrestling gym a lot.
Right. I'm going to tell you this, though, but it's so funny. The reason why I laugh is I had to laugh when the Japanese fighter said, I want to fight, quote unquote, foreign fighter.
Yes.
I'm sorry for the language, but they think if you beat somebody outside overseas, they think that's going to be a big appeal to like a UFC or the other promotion. Then it was, okay, what about this Brazilian? There's like, oh, I was hoping Americans. And the same theory, oh, what about this Korean? Oh, no, I was hoping Americans. So I really think when she meant by quote unquote foreign fighters, she did not mean Korean fighters,
Maybe, who knows? Yeah. But also, it's kind of the same beating a dead horse. Atomweight division's super dry right now in Japan.
It is, yeah.
And who's she going to fight? Are they going to dig up someone else? To make it interesting.
Here's what is Japanese women's MMA right now. It's each division. Maybe they got 2 girls on the top, and that's it, kind of stuff, right? So good thing you mentioned, because one fight I'm really looking forward to the New Year's Eve besides the Bantamweight Grand Prix is Hamasaki versus Izawa.
Yes.
Yeah, and Izawa is a prospect, obviously, right? And she could fight. She fought at 105 already? Because she was fighting 115 going down. Was supposed to go
at 105. She fought at the 49 kilo, the 109.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the rising weight class.
Right. So it's the super atom weight class, basically.
Yes.
Right? So that's another one of the opponent that Reina could fight in the future. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the Ayaka, that's actually that fight that was announced, the Ayaka Hamasaki Seika Izawa, is really interesting to me because despite winning her last 2 fights, it looks to me like Ayaka Hamasaki's slowing down.
I mean, yeah, she's not getting any younger, right?
Yeah. I think she's almost 40, if not 40.
Mm-hmm.
And her stamina looked suspect in the Kana Asakura fight to me. She tried to knock her out in the first round and kind of burned
she
her.
ran out of gas, right? So she didn't really think about the pacing, right? Okay.
And then in the Emi Fujino fight, I think Emi Fujino's body was more compromised going in the fight than we're aware. But I don't know if Ayaka Hamasaki was like quote unquote nice to her friend and didn't like beat her up even more. But the interesting factor to me is Seika Izawa is younger and is on paper a more decorated grappler.
Oh yeah, on paper, yeah.
But Ayaka Hamasaki has clearly more experience.
Oh, way more, right? In MMA.
I think Ayaka Hamasaki is in some ways has an underrated striker. Like she's not like Mirko Krokop, but she has a very good hook and punches. I mean, she almost knocked out Jinyu Frey. I think she would have knocked out Jinyu Frey if the ref didn't stop the fight because of the cut when she was fighting Invicta FC. So she's got some power in her hands. So it'll be interesting to see if she decides to strike with Seika or if she decides to engage her on the ground, because that was the interesting thing about the Kana Asakura fight was that Kana was able to get Ayaka down, which is incredibly rare. Throughout Ayaka's career, we've almost never seen her off her back. So that'd be kind of interesting to see as well.
Well, except when she fought Invicta.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, actually, yes, you're right. And I think clearly as a striking department, Ayaka is much better. And you know, she got the boxing coach before. I mean, after Carlos Pal, I mean, what was it? It was after Claudia Gadela fight. Her striking was improved tremendously. So yeah, but here's what it is. Izawa is also being criticized by some fans in Japan, saying it's too early to get Hamasaki fight. And she thinks she's already a big shot and blah, blah, blah kind of stuff.
See, what I've heard is I don't think she wanted this fight. What I've heard is that Sakakibara goes to the Deep Jewels shows. He was there this weekend. I think he saw Izawa fight and he was like, we need her to fight in Rizin. And the rumor I heard was that they actually wanted her to fight Kana Asakura a couple months ago. And she was like, I need another fight. I need more time to build up my skills. I mean, she's been training for less than 2 years.
Right. And she was actually graduating grad school and stuff like that too. So
yeah,
things are big for her, you know?
I think she's been trying to put her foot on the brakes, and Rising was like, hey, we need bodies. We need someone to fight Ayaka Hamasaki. And there's not a lot of people left that she hasn't beat.
Right. So, I mean, it was actually the obvious choice, the only choice actually they had.
Yes. Yeah. It was very clear to me that when she fought Siwoo Park, the winner of that fight was going to be fighting in Rising next.
Right. Now, but some of the criticism I'm hearing on the internet and stuff like that, it was that she barely won the last fight. So it's not like she's a rising level fighter. So what the hell is she doing there and blah, 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 you know? But again,
which I respond to Nisei. Nisei fought on a rising card.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Nika Izawa would murder her. So, I mean, you can't criticize. I mean, you can't criticize her being on a rising card when the fighters that fight on rising trigger.
Oh, yeah.
And undercard of rising cards also fight on rising cards.
Right. So many guys. So, all right. So now you mentioned about the girls. I wanted to ask you about this. You went to the Deep Jewels 35, right? This past week.
Yes, I did.
Now, how good was Hanako Sawa?
I'll start out by saying, I mean, she had a black eye going into the fight, so she's obviously training hard. Physique-wise, she looks like an athlete.
Okay.
Like, you see some girls on some Deep Jewels cards, they look like they might be a waitress somewhere or something. They look like they aren't training or anything. So she looks like an athlete, and her takedowns are really good. But she just started training. I think she told me she started training in March. So she doesn't have a whole year under her belt yet. And it looked like she may have been nervous because it was her debut. And so she kind of stuck to her bread and butter and just repeatedly took her opponent down.
So she just relied on her wrestling skills.
Right. Now, she did land some good ground and pound at moments. And what I was actually more impressed with was her opponent kind of got her in an arm bar and she got out of it.
Was she on the top? So the opponent tried to
from the bottom.
From the bottom. Okay, yeah, I can see.
I just remember that's like Miyu Yamamoto's like
right, but she knew how
crux.
to defend herself, basically.
Yeah, she knew how to defend herself from an armbar, which Miyu Yamamoto lost so many of her earlier fights just to armbars. So it was nice to see that. But when the media spoke to her afterwards. She seemed very enthusiastic about MMA.
Okay.
And she's excited for the tournament next year.
Right.
And so I expect her just to get better because, I mean, she's only 22 years old. She's only been training for 9 months, and she's a super high-level wrestler.
Right. I mean, just for those listeners who doesn't know Hanako is the 2016 World Cadet Freestyle World Champion at 56 kilograms. She also won the World Junior in 2018. Right? So she was very good at age 16 and 17. She was number 1 in the world. And now she's 22.
Right.
Although, I have to mention, Tapology has her birthday wrong. They listed her as 29 years old. But she's
when I was looking at her, when I was preparing for the event, I looked at Tapology and said she's 29. And at first I was like, oh, okay. But then I sat back and thought, like, this can't be right. She can't be 29 years old.
She won the Cadet World Championship and when 2018, right? So there's no way. Right.
Yeah.
So she's a 125, and Saiki is basically clear doing the flyweight tournament next year
for her.
Probably just for her, right? Basically, just to promote.
That's my theory is that it's like not just for her, because Deep and Deep Jewels have secretly put together a flyweight division over the year, and they have fighters like Kate Lotus. Now, Kate Lotus isn't going to beat Hanako Sawa, but Kate Lotus is very popular, and so putting her in a tournament is a smart move. They also have Shizuka Sugiyama, who's very popular. They have Aoi Kuriyama, who's very popular. I mean, I don't know what it is about these fighters that fight at Smoker's Gym, but whenever they fight in Tokyo, the fans all come from Osaka to watch them fight. And so he's got a lot of really popular flyweights, so it just makes sense for this tournament to happen. And Hanako Sawa is kind of like the black horse going into it. And if she continues to develop and learns how to strike, I think she'll be very dominant.
Now, you just mentioned, how many girls you just mentioned?
4.
4? We got Yukari Nabe, 5, right?
Yes.
Now, if I were...
Rin Nakai would be the sweet spot.
Exactly. I was just going to say, if I were Rin Nakai's manager, I would have to ask, is there a spot available for her? Because if she goes into this tournament, this is going to be an interesting one. And the winner should just fight for Rizin.
Well, it's one of those things where you kind of laugh. You go, Deep Jewels putting on a flyweight tournament. Okay. But then you look at the actual names and you're like, well, a lot of fighters on here are either very good or very popular. So this is actually a pretty good tournament.
Right. And some of them fought for Rizin already, like Shizuka Sugiyama, right? So
yes, exactly.
Yeah, so
I was surprised because Aoi Kuriyama had a lot of fans there. That's Smoker's Gym. Those fans travel. I'm telling you right now, I mean, that's the one reason why Kohei Hagiwara got a chance in Rizin to begin with. Same with the Kouzi's theory. All these guys, it's not because they're like the fighter who wins all the time, but for some reason they're very good at the grassroots marketing and and they all seem to be from Osaka.
Right. I mean, did you even watch Kohei Hagiwara's confession stuff by Rizin? Did you see what kind of car he was driving?
Oh yeah, he's very, very. He was at the Deep Jewels event, and he got swarmed by people.
Right,
so and it all makes sense.
He's wearing and everything else, you could tell.
Clothes he's wearing. Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, you can tell there's some big sponsor giving him a chunk of money.
Well, it's smart because I think some of the smarter fighters have realized that you shouldn't rely on Rizin to make your money. You should use the platform to make your own money.
Like a Sean O'Malley kind of stuff, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But back to the Deep Jewels card, there's an interesting comment I want to kind of get your opinion on. So Miki Motono, the former strawweight champion who injured her knee earlier this year, she's back. Her knee's fine. She didn't have any tape on it. And she won like a pretty dominant. She kind of smashed her opponent. And after the event at the post-fight media conference, Saiki said, I think she should drop down to atom weight. There's just not any straw weights. She's got to drop down. And then she can go to Rizin. And I know that you hate seeing these 52-kilo fighters dropping down to 48 and kind of pigeonholing themselves. So I'm kind of interested in your comment.
Here's what it is. There are no 115 girl in Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the only reason why Mizuki is still Deep Jewel's champion. You know, like, we wanted to relinquish that. Like, come on, take the belt back. But he's like, no, you know, just keep her in there because there's nobody there.
He and Amanda Lucas will be champions forever.
Right, exactly. Right. And that's the same theory for Josh Barnett for open weight division for Pancrase. She's been champion for like 15 years, maybe, right? I mean, so
nice
I mean, and the bottom line is this: on the Rizin, they only have a super atom or 125.
Yes.
Right. That's why they let Nakai go to the UFC. They weren't going to promote 115. They were going to do 105 or 110 or 125 because they thought they could do it to Sugiyama, Rin Nakai, right? Kana Watanabe and stuff, 125. And 105 got the Hamasaki, Rina. So they're just not really looking into 115 anymore.
Right. My issue with it, though, is I've always seen Rising is not really caring about divisions. Like, they'll bring a fighter over and test them out, and if they're popular, they'll bring them back again.
Sure, right.
Kind of like the Ponchon Rina stuff, which I actually do have a comment on Ponchon Rina, but I just thought it was kind of interesting that he's like actively telling people, because Miki, unlike Seika Izawa at strawweight, was like, oh, you obviously don't cut weight. Like, when we spoke to her, she walks around at like 53 or 54 kilo. I think she like walks around like 53 kilo or something. So her going down to 49 wasn't a problem. But Miki Matono looked kind of cut at 52. So that's asking for some serious changes.
Well, you know what? Here's what it is. This is the big difference. It's because of the pandemic too, right? If this is not pandemic, you know, like for example, Miki Motono, she's from Team AACC, and Abe-san from AACC, the founder, the head, he's really like more global thinking. He himself like to go to like overseas, you know, do a lot of stuff.
Strawweight is way easier to go overseas than atomweight.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's my point. So, you know, it's so funny. I'm not saying this is wrong, but majority of fighters in Japan thinks that they should be a champion in Japan first, then go to the overseas. You know, I think it's almost rude to even think about UFC if you're not even champion. You know.
Yes.
Yeah. But when you really think about it, right? I mean, that's not the mentality for the American fighters. I mean, all these guys who fight for contenders when they got 5-6 pro fight, they're not champions. Who cares about being local champ? And if they get a chance to get into UFC, they want to jump into the UFC. In that right? What's the point of going down at this point? I think girl like Izawa or Motono should build up their bod physical strength to be able to compete at 115 so they can go to the
when that contender series happens in China, they should both be on that plane immediately trying to get on that contender series.
Exactly. And not only that, because the UFC is doing London show, right, in March or something. And they're trying to do more overseas shows. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, but obviously if they got the UFC Performance Institute in Shanghai, they're looking to do Shanghai shows. You know, they want to probably go back to Singapore, Macau. You know, those are the shows that they would need the Japanese fighters as well, right? So who knows? You know, so they should be thinking about like a long-term plan as well. But for now, they can only see Rizin because they don't feel like they can travel anytime soon.
Right.
So, you know, then it's better to be more popular in Japan and score some good sponsorships. Then go to the UFC because, like I told you, I think last time, I think the sponsorship we could get through Rizin fighters are really, really good, actually. So, you know, if they could scoop pretty good sponsor for the next couple of years who pays you a monthly salary, you know, and that kind of stuff, and that will help them to get ready for the UFC, you know, or Bellator, or whatever they want to go. You know?
Well, kind of supporting what you're saying. I mean, if you want to be a UFC champion, wouldn't it be better to spend your athletic prime in the UFC?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of like the history of Japanese fighters going there past their prime and kind of getting smashed and embarrassed. I would rather see them there and they're at their peak, and then they can kind of come back for a victory tour in Japan. I
mean, I would say 95% of the Japanese fighters who went to sign with the Zuffa signed like 5 years after their peak. You know what I mean? Like, they're only very handful when they're peaking. And yes, I think just the better that way. And the truth is that you could always be a Rizin or Pancrase or Deep or Shoot champion after you went to UFC. You know, it's like, you know, so it's not like you have to make sure to get that belt first before you go to UFC. So it's a different mentality, you know.
But the pandemic has kind of thrown a wrench into that because
Oh yeah,
the
exactly.
inability to leave, they kind of have to make hay while the sun shines. So that makes sense on why Izawa is in Rising now. And there's no other option for him.
Right. I mean, there's no other options. And again, maybe I don't know about the contract, but maybe she didn't have to commit for such a long time.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? And the
Maybe
good
it's through
thing
deep.
about, yeah, I think it's a good thing about Deep Jules and Deep with the Rizin is that fact that if Izawa loses to Hamasaki, Deep will probably give her a fight immediately and put her back on the winning track. And she's what, 3-0 now? She became 3-1 and 4-1. No big deal, right? It doesn't hurt her, you know. If she's 5-1, she could go to contenders probably, you know.
I mean, Mizuki Furuse got absolutely smashed by Kana Asakura. And Deep has given her so many fights afterwards.
I know, exactly, right. Because they need a fighter. So there's a place for them to be more active, you know.
So speaking of Deep, what do you think about the news of Tencho leaving Shuto and hopping ship to Deep?
I actually knew about that for a while. Yeah, so I mean,
is Shuto just a sinking ship? Are the rats fleeing? Like, what's going on?
You know, it's too bad because they were supposed to bring in more like overseas fighters, right? You know, to the VTJ and Shuto, and because of this new restriction, now they have to sit and wait. Yeah. So yeah, right now, I mean, many fighters felt that they, for fighting for Shuto VTJ, they get to fight some world class talent, but it's not going to happen for a while. Yeah. So I don't know. This is going to be a very difficult time for Shuto.
Because I mean, are those fighters now seeing like Deep and Pancrase? Those are roads to rising. And if Shuto's kind of sitting on the sidelines, I'm going to go over there and fight while I can.
Right. Most of the people feel that way, but again, I can't go into really details, but some Shuto contract has this restriction. It's kind of hard to fight other promotions. You know, you kind of have to sit out like a year.
Did you see the comment he made inside the cage?
What did he say?
He said that if you come to his restaurant and say, I'm a Deep fan, you get a free Nomi Hodai, free all you can drink for the night. Which apparently was met with wild applause from the crowd.
You know what? But here's what I think so. Shuto, Pancrase, Deep, they're like a LFA, CFFC, Titan in this country, right? In America. Nobody make a big fuzz about if you go and fight for CFFC and fight for Titan. It happens all the time. No big deal. That's the way I look at it. I think there should be more.
They like to make a big deal out of it in Japan, though.
Yeah, but what's the big deal? I mean, it's not like they're making huge money, meaning it's not like promoters are putting a big investment on these fighters.
I will say I think the culture is changing, though, because what I noticed was I remember like 10 years ago, if you were a fighter, you had to be gym affiliated and you like weren't allowed to train outside of your gym. Essentially, it's like, oh, that's
most of the time
not polite to train outside of your gym.
Right.
And now when you look at these events, it's like, oh, all these girls that train at AACC, they all train at a jiu-jitsu school too. They're all going to private boxing coaches. They're all going to Muay Thai coaches. Some of them are going to Brave for wrestling practice. Like, it seems like the international kind of culture of having a home base but going out to other gyms as well is starting to take root in Japan, because on Deep and Deep Jewels too, I'm seeing more and more fighters that are like quote unquote free, which means they aren't affiliated.
Right.
So maybe the culture is changing.
It is actually, it's changing, and it's changing. You know, there are many reasons why it changed, and one of the many reasons, and I see that as a problem, is this: fighters are more knowledgeable about modern training than coaches. Meaning,
right.
I see more fighters going to the overseas and expansion training in America. You see that almost none for coaches. So you don't, if you're a fighter, you don't go up and tell your coaches you don't study enough. But the bottom line is, like, they kind of try to talk to coaches like, hey, listen, I need to do this, I need to do that. I think fighters start to realize is that there's a limitation from the one coach in terms of what you can learn.
Well, right. And plus the Japanese technique was always the teaching technique was always kind of like, just do it. Like the coach is just kind of watching. There's nobody coming in and specifically teaching techniques or drills.
Yeah, exactly.
So Roxanne Modafferi detailed a lot about it when she moved to Las Vegas and the giant kind of culture shock she had when she was at a very different more efficient gym.
It is actually. They teach you technique more. They're more repetitious workout, right? Repetitions. Like it basically teaches your body to how to move. But it's really different Japanese training.
Yes.
Of course, it's changing now, but it's changing because the fighter came here and see how people are training here. They go back to Japan and they try to do the same thing. It's not the coaches who studies,
I also think another reason it's changing is as more money becomes available to the fighters through sponsorships and through bigger paydays, a lot of them aren't required to work full-time jobs now. And so you're seeing fighters with more time to train.
Right. Yeah. Some top fighters, right? They're full-time now, right?
Plus, in the past, I mean, it was like, oh, I go to work all day and I go to the gym at 9 o'clock at night and I train for a couple hours. And now it's like, oh, on Tuesdays, I go to this gym, I go to my personal trainer, and then I have another gym. And so it's starting to look a little bit more like its American counterpart, which is kind of exciting.
In that sense, I still have to mention that girl like Hamasaki still got a full-time job. So she probably only works out once a day, right? At night, right?
Well, I interviewed Saudi Oshima, and she only, when she got started before the Kanasa fight, she was only training 2 days a week.
Right. So
she has 2 kids and she's married, and she's like, I don't have the time. I was only training 2 days a week. I was like, well, you looked very good for someone who trained only 2 days a week.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think lots of fighters, like top fighters in Japan right now, as you mentioned, like, has a good sponsorship or making good money on the fight. So they're like being able to, work out full time, which is a big advantage, right? Over the person who can only work out at night. So
you mentioned Ayaka. It reminds me of like Mikuru and Emi Fujino, who both have like jobs that are kind of like gifts from their sponsors, where it's like, come work at our office. Because I mean, the place Ayaka works is the guy that he sponsors so many fighters.
So many, but they actually have to work. They're there 40 hours a week. They're like assisting in rehabilitations and all kinds of stuff. So they work, and I'm pretty sure in the beginning Mikuru and Memi had to work too, but not really right now, right? I mean,
I still like the idea of like Mikuru and Emi answering phones at a law office.
I mean, that's not doing right now. I mean, he has no reason to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So no, but exactly. So. And also, what's so funny? I can tell you this right now. Like when I first began booking fighters to the Japanese market back in like 1999 or 2000, I got called into, I won't tell you names, group of gym owners and managers. And I walked into this closed coffee shop in the middle of the night. They came, they asked me to come here. Most of the chairs on the table, it's all closed. All the back room, I walked in. There were like
a lot of guys missing pinkies.
Yeah. And they basically say this in Japan. It's like a political world. There's always parties, so you have to belong to some party. So fine. In Japan right now, there's a K1 or Pride. Are you going to book fighters into K1 clan or Pride clan? Where you're going to have to make that decision. That's what they told me.
I never understood that idea because it seems counterproductive. Or if the promotions kind of work together, they could elevate the sport and themselves. Where if they battle against each other, they kind of risk destroying it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think they make a big fuss about fighters leaving and go to another promotion. It's like old traditions coming from the Japanese pro wrestling world.
I think deep in Pancrase really don't feel as strongly about that anymore.
Not anymore.
Because I know deep in Pancrase will have events where they'll have like a fighter from Pancrase fighting a fighter from deep, and the Pancrase fighter will like come out to the Pancrase theme song.
Right. I mean, that's right, because
Kai will even be in the VTR.
Yeah, exactly. And Sakai-san, who is the president of Pancrase, he's not coming from those old Japanese, combat sports world. So he's businessman. So he's thinking different. And
he's much more business savvy.
Exactly. And Saiki's been around for a long time, and he understands what fighter needs. In the beginning, he was like that, but he had to change that to cope with the industry is changing. The Shuto is the only promotion it's not really changing that much, and they try to.
If anything, they're doubling down. They're trying to be even more strict than they were.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, I won't name names, but for example, I even suggested one of the top Shuto fighters. Why don't you go and train with Naoki? You know? And fighter wanted to, but his coach says, no, we have to train within our network. I mean, what's the point? You know? You know?
But there's something I wanted to talk about before this kind of transitioning. So I was kind of interested to see that Ponchon Rina wasn't part of the Rising card.
Is she going to be? I mean, there's like 6-7 fights left, right? On the spot.
She has a fight scheduled for January in a different promotion.
Oh, okay. So she's not fighting. Is she fighting for Rise or Knockout?
Knockout.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Well,
she's moving up a division and fighting in Knockout, which tells me several things. It tells me Sakakibara wasn't that impressed with the numbers she brought in.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he thought that she was going to be a big ratings draw, you better believe she would be on this card. Right. Because this is the make it or break it. We need the best ratings possible. And so she must have not impressed them that much. And she must have gotten some note about how they want her to be bigger, like physically bigger, because she's moving up in weight now. Because I think they're kind of worried that I think they probably want her to go up to like 48, around 48 kilo.
Right, yeah.
Instead of 44. Mm-hmm. They're like, it's a little too small. Maybe we'd like you to get a little bigger. That's my idea, because why else would she be moving up in weight? And you got to think that since Sakakibara was somewhat critical, she's going to be looking to try to knock her opponent out. And if she can't do that, I don't know if they'll bring her back.
But I think they will still need a talent like that, and I think one thing is, like, if Sakakibara is probably wondering if he wants to even continue doing women's kickboxing.
Right.
Well, yeah, the bottom line is I think Pancha might have to do MMA.
The thing is, because she did, the whole thing going into her fight was him saying, this is just general. I'm trying to see what the interest levels are like. Like, he didn't seem super committed to women's kickboxing. He just wanted to give it a shot and see what the interest was like.
Right.
And it must not have been good enough for him to be okay.
But again, she only had one fight, so it's hard to build up anybody with one single fight. So we have to see,
I'm just trying to. I think also it shows an interesting aspect of the Rising Rise dynamic, because Ponchon kept saying she wanted to fight Hinata Terayama on New Year's Eve,
right?
And Rise said no.
No.
Okay. Rise said, if you want to fight Hinata Terayama, do it in Rise. I think also Rising might have run into a roadblock that they kind of didn't expect, and that Rise has been spending a lot of time building up their women's divisions, and maybe they're not willing to share.
Yeah, exactly. And they have more talents too. And for Sakakibara, it's not a guaranteed good rating. Who knows? Right, exactly. Maybe wasting that spot. So
it's not like a hill worth dying on. So just let her go fight Knockout, and if she gets more popular, bring her back. But I would think maybe you'd see Ponchon Rina on like a Trigger or a Landmark show again.
Yeah, I think so, because next year they're gonna add more shows, obviously, and I can do it right now. We don't have to wait till March or April to see the show. I think it's gonna happen in February. Yeah, and considering the number of shows to Rising, Trigger, and Landmark, I would say maybe even 20 shows next year. Who knows?
Also, I also have this theory. My other thought is that they're expecting Rina to fight on the card. And if Rena's fighting on the card, they don't need Ponchon Rina.
No, not right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe they want her to kind of go back down, develop her a little bit more, develop her in Rising Trigger, have her get some wins outside of Rising, and then bring her back if she kind of becomes a bigger star.
That's true. Because for next year, the Sakakibara is already thinking what star he's going to have his left, right? Because what if both Asakuras lose in New Year's Eve? Right?
Very possible. Very possible.
Right, in a way. And also, Horiguchi just lost, which made everything so different for the Japanese MMA. Right?
It was like a day of national mourning. My wife,
I know.
My wife screamed and then went to bed and wasn't to be bothered for the rest of the day.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, it was like that. I know. There's so many fans are so devastated. I know that some people even called in sick.
But then there's the whole there's a tournament, and Horiguchi, he's going to redeem himself and beat Pettis in the tournament.
I said
and now
this,
they all want him to fight Pettis in Japan.
I said this publicly more than a few times, but do you really think he should just go right into that tournament in March or April? This is his second knockout loss from the striking to the head.
I will say it was a really bad knockout. Like his whole body went stiff. Like it wasn't like a TKO stoppage. He was out.
He was out cold.
He was carried out of the ring on a stretcher.
Stretcher, right.
And I know he's a somewhat older fighter, but after that kind of knockout, you almost want to see them take some more time off to get the head, allow their head time to recover.
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know boxing is different, right? Because boxing, you take constant hit to the head, right? In a boxing, if you get knocked out like that, I don't think you fight for maybe a couple of years. Not even train for 3 months or even 6 months. Who knows, right?
Yeah, because I think if in boxing, I wouldn't want to see them in the ring again for like at least a year.
Right. Yeah.
After that kind of knockout.
MMA is different, but here's my theory, though. Can you even name, even in the history of UFC champions, can you even name a champion who got knocked out by strike to the head and still be able to come back and became a champion and stay champion for a long time, except GSP? Remember,
that was the one example. I was thinking GSP was the only one I was latching on.
Right, exactly. So it's not that. It's really not that. I wouldn't say. I don't know if I should say this. It's not easy. It's just safer to not do that right now.
No. You know. I mean, how many people have had an immediate rematch and won in title fights? It's got to be an insanely low number.
Right. But this is you talking about tournament here. I'm talking about tournament, right? Bellator coming up. Immediate rematch, I'm fine. Maybe like 8 months later, 10 months later, immediate rematch. But hey, it's a tournament, and that means
I meant like him fighting him again in the opening round of the tournament, which seems to be what Japanese fans want. But yeah, I mean, you got to think about the damage. If I was him, I would definitely be consulting with a doctor. But because it was a bad knockout, it was much worse than the Kai Asakura knockout.
Oh yeah, it was much worse, right? Yeah. Although he was winning majority of the fight on the scorecard, right?
I mean, he was winning every round.
Right.
I mean, that's the problem, though. I mean, I feel like the Pettis brothers have done this time and time again, where they just need 1 second and it's over.
Mm-hmm. Well, but let me ask you this though: when you look at the Horiguchi's performance, do you think he was the same 2 years ago?
I think he looked like he was. I was trying to tell my wife it looked like he was slowing down.
Yeah.
And it looked like he was getting sloppy.
Yeah, slowing down.
That's why he got caught.
Yeah, that too. And also, even though he was able to take Sergio down, he didn't land any strong pounding. One of his strengths was able to do pretty good ground control and smash the opponent with the strong poundings. But he wasn't able to do that. And I think I was a little bit more impressed with Sergio in the sense that even though he wasn't throwing many punches, he had the center of the cage almost throughout the fight, meaning he was pressuring. He was making Horiguchi move.
So it's interesting. You kind of have an interesting perspective because one of your fighters was in Sergio's corner.
Oh yeah, Rin was there. Yeah.
How did he feel about Mikuru's comment about him being a glorified mitt holder now?
He's a pad holder and whatever.
He's a pad holder now.
Corner man. But here's what it is: if you have a chance to corner a fight like that, of course you'll go corner. That'll be a good experience for them. And thank you to Sergio for mentioning him so much on the media more than once. That at this point in hardcore North American MMA fans, Ren may be more popular or known than Mikuru, right? So
it's possible, very possible,
right? So I think it turned out to be a pretty good promotion for Ren.
Yeah, exactly.
Well. Yeah, and I think Sergio is such a nice guy. So is Duke Rufus, and they both want to corner Ren on his next fight. So if there's no problem for them traveling, I can tell you right now that they both are coming to corner Ren.
So Ren is in Japan right now, but there's also talk of him moving to the U.S. soon, right?
Yes, but here's what it is. As you know, that you have to get a visa to move, right? Permanent.
Right.
And that will cost him about $6,000 and probably take about 6 months. So he's gonna go back one more time, but again with a tourist visa, which will only allow him to stay 3 months.
Right.
So that's a fight camp. He fights. He got money. Meanwhile, he's applying for the visa and blah, blah, blah. So in terms of permanently move to States, it's probably like mid next year. To get the visa, then he doesn't have to go back and forth, back and forth.
So will he be up in Wisconsin?
Yes, he'll be up in Wisconsin. He really likes the team, you know.
Perfect.
So, you know, I think I don't know. I mean, I thought that Wisconsin is a little bit more a countryside compared to like Tokyo. But according to Ren, like Adachiku, where he lives, is really a countryside of Tokyo. So I think Milwaukee is better. He says Milwaukee is a bigger city. So
I used to live in Adachiku, so I understand.
Oh, you do? Really?
Okay. The year before I moved there, they built the train, so I understand it being in the countryside.
Okay. And he said, you know, in Milwaukee, you can take a train about an hour to Chicago too. So
That's
on the
not bad at
weekend,
all.
he can have a fun in Chicago and stuff like that. So that's a good place for him. But more than anything, I think the fact that Duke Rufus is an ex-K1 fighter, right, who teaches MMA, so he understands strikers, you know.
Yeah.
And they got a bunch of good bantamweight, featherweight, you know. And they're a good team. Yeah.
Yeah. You got Ben Askren nearby teaching wrestling too. So
well, I don't think all the time, but I think the bottom line is this. This is like compared to a team like big team like ATT or like Sanford MMA, there's too many top fighters there. So if I sent Ren, who's 0-1 in MMA, he won't get a proper treatment.
I won't get the attention that he deserves.
He won't get the attention, right? And they have so many fighters they have to worry about. They have so many fighters they got a corner, right? So the place like Duke Rufus's gym, they're like more family type, and I think that it's great. And I'm trying to get him like so I want to try to make him way more active in that.
Duke Rufus is a champion. Yeah.
Right.
Let me see if I have anything.
So I don't think we missed anything.
Oh, did you see that Ushiku and Kume both won?
That's right. Okay, let's talk about Deep 105. Ushiku beat Koda, right? Kanda.
Yes. We can just tell people. I mean, we don't get too deep into it, but thank God Ushiku won, or else Rising would look terrible.
Oh, I know.
Their champion went down to Deep and lost, but he won, and Kume won at Pancrase.
Oh, yeah, I want to see him back in Rising. That. He beat that, Yambo, right? And how did he look? I heard he took a knockdown.
Yeah, but I mean, it was very. What I have. Yeah, took a knockdown. I'm sorry, there's so many fights that happened this weekend.
I know. I have to catch up on this Deep and Pancrase. I haven't been able to catch up on that because there's too many fights here, you know.
But he got the submission, so he's still, for as old as he is, I mean, he's like 36 or something. He still looks pretty good.
Right, and that was the last Pancrase show at the Studio Coast, right? That venue.
The Studio Coast has been shut down. Just super unfortunate because I love that venue.
Now, I heard that Pancrase is going to make some official announcements of what they're going to do with the next year. Oh, they already.
Yeah. I haven't heard anything yet, so. But I want you to know that at the Pancrase show, Team Date was there in full force. There was the men's side. There's 4 men from Team Date fighting on the card. And the one who joined Nori and Karen and Team Prav, however they pronounce that, beat Yuki Kondo.
Oh my God, Yuki Kondo's still fighting, huh?
Yes, he beat Yuki Kondo. And afterwards, the 2 girls took a picture with Shinya Aoki. And I just realized that that's the new Abima show that I need to watch is Team Date working with Shinya Aoki.
I'm telling you right now, yes, they should do a reality show about the Team Date. And I'm
yes.
Yeah.
And throw in Shinya Aoki, who no one can understand what he's saying, and you have television gold.
Shinya he has his own brand. I think Shinya Aoki itself is a brand in the Japanese combat sports scene. Right?
He knows what he's doing.
Right. I mean, Mikuru is the 2 guy who is very good at self-promoting, obviously.
Oh yeah. And I mean, in some effect, Hagiwara, a lot of these in Kouzi, a lot of these Osaka guys are really good at it too. But
so as Kintaro, right? They must have some like sets of supporters who is willing to really back him up and do all kinds of stuff for him and blah blah blah. You know.
Yeah, but. I just wanted to drop in those 2 like rising alumni / champion Kume and Ushiku both got big wins over the weekend. So maybe we'll see them on a trigger or a landmark or a rising number.
I mean, Kume should get another shot, right? I mean,
yeah. His last Rising fight was so exciting. That's why I want to see him back up.
Yeah, I mean, Takeda should beat Benoit. I mean, even though I like Benoit.
I mean, is this the part where they're like, okay, Benoit, you've had your fun. Now's the time that we kill you.
Right, right. And did you hear about that comment on press conference about how black is strong?
What?
Yeah, okay. Here's what Takeda said. You know how you like to go to tanning salon?
Oh yeah,
About
his profile on one of his social media accounts is like him essentially black. To get
exactly.
cartoons.
He said, more black you're, more strong you are, right? But the Benoit said, in that category, I beat you because I'm more black.
That's hilarious.
That's hilarious, you know?
Because Benoit, I mean, is like a comedian, so
yeah, no, I like Benoit. He's funny as hell in a way, you know.
Oh yeah. And his last fight was super exciting, but I mean, I can't see a way that Takeda just doesn't suplex the hell out of him.
Oh, and he's gonna take him down very easy, and
over and over and over again,
over and over. And I don't think Benoit can even stand up, right? I mean, once he gets taken down, that ground control is pretty tough.
There's always the chance that he knocks him out when he's coming in,
but right.
I think Takeda's just going to take him to Suplex City.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. He's going to do the cut it in lift too, like he did in Chan, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. So anyway, so we covered everything today,
yes.
right? All right. So we see you again in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Oh, that will be right before the New Year's Eve show. So this is going to be a big
perfect. Have a little preview once all the fights are announced.
All right. That's going to be great. Okay, so I'll see you in 2 weeks then.
Yep. See you then.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.